Sesame Street is saved by Netflix, and according to the Daily Beast, is this the Daily Beast? Yeah, Netflix is saving Sesame Street from Trump's reign of terror. That's an actual headline.
Netflix is saving Sesame Street because the public funding was being cut to PBS. And places, and you know, it wasn't even that they were making Sesame Street, the Sesame Workshop. It was they were spending how much money to make Sesame Street for other countries?
$20 million for an overseas, I think it was an Iraqi version of Sesame Street or something. They were laying people off. So here's the thing. HBO was Big Bird's sugar daddy for years, and then they decided that it wasn't worth it anymore for them. So they cut the funding, and then, the government cut its funding, and the people like you stopped paying for it, I guess. And kids are watching their iPads, and they're watching Netflix. And that's where kids are going to watch, stuff like CoComelon. So they're saving Sesame Street, and apparently they picked up Peppa Pig too. So
yes, what's going on is, we've talked about this before, that after YouTube, Netflix is the next biggest, streamer, and a lot of kids are on there. So Netflix is trying to just use their platform to make it into trying to beat Disney at what Disney is doing to make a lot of the kids programming on there, or what YouTube's doing, so that you could just put your kid in front of Netflix now on these channels and, and run it.
Yes.
They're trying to cut into YouTube is what I think is going on.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because, kids were watching stuff on YouTube. Now, the problem with YouTube and the kids content on YouTube, which is where CoComelon came from originally, is that some of the stuff is pretty dicey, and that actually triggered one of the apocalypses, apocalypse, I don't know what. Anyway, because we were, there were all these like crazy ass Elsa and Spider-Man videos that were out there that were like, they were like injecting each other with drugs and cutting limbs off and stuff like that. And they look like kids' cartoons. And then, of course, the commercialism of it. A lot of, channels like Ryan's World, where it's all, opening toys and, hey, kids, go bug your parents for money. Not like Sesame Street, where they never asked the kids to beg their parents for money.
Or when we were kids and they have the toys. Hey, kids, you want the toys like the show? Go bug your parents for money.
Right.
I mean, that's how it always is.
That's how it always is. Peppa Pig is like she's a hog. She's a money hog. She makes all kinds of bucks.
Own theme park and everything.
Yeah, they got a theme park coming and all that. So let's talk about this before we get into it any further. This is Kneon. This is Clownfish TV. This is Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. Guys, if you do, you will get a woohoo.
Woohoo.
And go out to news.clownfishtv.com. Sign up for our newsletter so you don't miss any thrilling content or updates. So we've been covering the Sesame Street thing. A lot of people screaming and crying, wailing about Sesame Street. I don't even know if kids watch Sesame Street anymore.
It's funny because a lot of them don't even watch Sesame Street. They probably weren't supporting PBS.
No, were you paying for it?
And they were mad when it went to HBO and got put behind a paywall, because we talked about it then and said if the purpose of Sesame Street was to reach kids, on PBS, so that there's kids that might not have streaming services or more expensive TV would still have the option to watch it. And their answer was to put it on the new episodes on HBO behind a paywall. And I thought that was crap. And now, they're going to put it on Netflix. Behind
the paywall. You know what's weird about this, though, is that when they were on HBO, when Sesame Street was on HBO, they did all these Warner Brothers crossovers. So they had like Game of Thrones and stuff. I'm like, are they going to do like Elmo's Squid Game or something?
Oh my God. That would be funny.
That would be hilarious.
That'd be traumatic to children, but it'd be hilarious.
All right. So let's go with the most ridiculous version of the story. That's from the Daily Beast. Again, Netflix saves Sesame Street from Trump's reign of terror.
Sorry. If their goal is to get clicks, that's going to totally do it.
Oh my God. This is okay. There are still sunny days ahead for Elmo, Cookie Monster, and Abby, who have all survived Trump's recent assassination attempt thanks to the rescue efforts of Netflix.
Oh my God. Get a drink, everyone. This is going to be fun.
Donald Grump on Sesame Street. The streamer just announced that beloved children's program Sesame Street will move to its service after the Trump administration cut funding for its decades-long home PBS. Actually, the funding was only like, it was like less than 10%.
Yeah, I was going to say, they keep going on about this, about the funding being cut for these shows. When you look into the budgets of these shows, a lot of them, the funding that was cut wasn't even enough to do an episode. Like, it wasn't the massive impact that they keep trying to make it out to be.
The news comes following a tough few months for Sesame Workshop, the nonprofit organization behind Sesame Street, which lost its contract with HBO after the network sought to shift away from children's programming. I mean, we did a video on that talking about Warner Brothers and how, like, was it like less than 5% or whatever of the audience for HBO Max was kids?
Right, but beyond that, HBO Max was basically keeping it afloat. Why aren't they doing articles about it was HBO's Max's attempt assassination on, the Sesame Street show? Instead, they're doing that. It was Trump's fault, but they couldn't stay afloat without going to get a big sugar daddy to begin with. And if viewers like you weren't going to be their sugar mama and daddies, they were going to Zaslav to ask him for, some stuff. And they said, no, we're not going to do this anymore. And then they thought the government was going to give them money. And that didn't happen because, I'm sorry, why the hell were we paying tax dollars to pay for Sesame Street in another country?
I'm just like, somebody needs to do the meme. That motherfucker paid for Sesame Street.
I know. Oh, God,
don't you know it's free, bitches?
That's funny. But now they went to Netflix because they just need someone. They need the money. So they're going to take the money. They're going to make Elmo dance for that money. And they're going to do whatever they can to get this big company to pay for it and foot the bill. And no one's calling that out. They're not calling out the fact that they're paywalling it on either, whether it be Max or Netflix. They're not complaining about that. No, they're mad because Trump cut partial funding to PBS that was getting the old episodes anyway, because they were first going on to places like HBO.
So this is interesting, though. Actually, the Netflix deal is better than the HBO one because they said under the new agreement, the new episodes are going to premiere on Netflix and PBS on the same day.
Okay, see, now that's a win. That is a win right there. That's a win for families who can't afford, HBO, Netflix, that kind of stuff. This way your kids are still going to get, and then they're probably going to help fund it. And this way your kids are still going to have the same access. Now that's a much better deal. I mean, I'll give Netflix credit for that one.
This unique public-private partnership is going to enable Sesame Workshop to bring our research-based curriculum to young children around the world with Netflix's global reach, while ensuring children and communities across the U.S. continue to have free access on public television to the Sesame Street they love. Yeah, it took capitalism to save Sesame Street, but
I just think it's great that they're doing it. I think it's great that they're doing it at the same time, because I thought it was absolute shit that they were putting Sesame Street on HBO behind a paywall and kids couldn't get those episodes until they were old. And I thought that was really crappy and totally against what Sesame Street was about. At least with Netflix doing this deal, they're going to still get their sugar mama daddy out of that one. But they also make sure that the kids that don't have access to streaming will have access to Sesame Street. It's being funded through Netflix or whatever.
I don't like this. See, Sesame Street hasn't been Sesame Street in a long time. They said the Netflix deal is going to kick off the 56th season of Sesame Street. Yikes. They're going to have a new format change, though, dropping the magazine-style format in favor of 11-minute story sequences. Okay,
that's because they're all doing that. They're all doing that with, like, they did it with Bluey, and they did it. A lot of these shows are, like, short, because kids are already having a short attention span and they can't focus on things. So their answer isn't to maybe do better programming that, they can focus on. Their answer is to overwhelm the shit out of them, but for 10 minutes and then say, go ask mama for sugar.
See, I didn't like that because we watched Sesame Street with our kids and they had Elmo's World on. It was like the last 15 minutes of Sesame Street was just Elmo.
Elmo's World.
Shut up, Elmo. But I liked Sesame. Like when I was a kid, Sesame Street it seemed like there was more of a focus on actual education and not,
Yeah, that's their curriculum. But I'm seeing parents talking about how they don't let them watch newer shows because the kids, they'll watch Bear in the Big Blue House and stuff like that because the kids can watch the entire show and then they aren't so overstimulated that they're bouncing off the walls or won't go to bed after. Where these new shows, when they're trying so hard to cram it, action-packed into 10, 11 minutes, I think actually it's overwhelming children. And that's why these Gen, Ys now or whatever, Gen Alphas or what the heck they're calling them now, they have no attention span.
Yeah.
As a teacher, it's really not good.
Yeah, and again, like the 11-minute chunks. I was thinking Sesame Street was an hour, but the format, they segued into different segments. It wasn't really overwhelming because they would do the street segments, and then they would go into like the little animated shorts and stuff. They would teach letters and numbers and stuff.
Man,
but it held your attention.
If I was a kid and I only got 11 minutes of the show I liked, I'd feel like I was ripped off. What the heck?
Big Burris. Sorry, it's funny. It's funny. But yeah, I mean, so like I actually kind of wondered if this wasn't going to happen because I think we said before, like it's Sesame Street. They're not going to let Sesame Street fall on its ass.
This is a better deal though for everyone because kids still get access, but it's still paywalled. But at least now everyone gets the new episodes. But then I don't think that's going to be a lot of. It's not going to drive a lot of subscriptions to Netflix when you can watch it for free. Yeah. However, I think what they're counting on is starting a whole kids block, and you might watch Sesame Street for free, but you might want to go there to watch other shows. It's much easier to park you there. I
think what's going to happen before it's all said and done, I think a lot of the Cartoon Network shows, I think are going to wind up over on Netflix. I think that they might choose to continue them over on Netflix. Because that's kind of what they did with, well, it wasn't really a Cartoon Network show, but they did the new Batman series over on Amazon. Because Warner Brothers doesn't want to deal with cartoons. They don't want a linear TV network, but they could have Cartoon Network Studios stuff on Netflix. It's a licensing deal. Warner Brothers makes money. They don't have to.
Is what we said they should do from the beginning. Disney, Warner Brothers, and they all started wanting their own streaming services. We're like, that's probably not going to be a good idea. It's going to be Highlander, and you're better off just making content for Netflix and Hulu.
Yeah.
And they didn't listen. So
they didn't listen. So here we are. But yeah, this is going to replace, is Disney Junior still a thing? Because I mean,
it is, but I think most kids are just watching YouTube or Netflix, mostly YouTube, because they had a lot of the stuff, Blue's Clues and stuff like that. Yeah. Or not Blue's Clues, Cocomelon and stuff was on there. Yeah. Disney was cornering a lot with having Blue's Clues and things on it. And people felt safer with their kids on Disney. So I think Disney and YouTube were the big ones, and Netflix were the big ones for kids. I think Netflix is trying to put themselves above Disney and YouTube.
I've never watched an episode of Cocomelon, but our son says it's like if Michael Bay did a Nickelodeon show, a Nick Jr. show, because it's like really shortcut and it's like really, it's for kids with very little attention.
Well, that's what they all are, and that's the problem. Yeah. They're trying to turn Sesame Street into the same thing, and long term, that's not good. I mean, a very research-based curriculum. Well, I can tell you as a mom and teacher for years that your research-based curriculum, if you're going 11-minute shorts, is stupid.
Oh yeah, but good luck with that. Whatever. There's
cheaper.
your watch. There's your watch time. There's your watch time right there, right? But they could say, look, so it's Netflix, so they're 11-minute episodes. So okay, look, we just dropped 19 seasons of Sesame Street.
Yeah, right.
Because it used to be an hour. So okay, so one episode of Sesame Street's one Netflix season now. Yes, 6 episodes. That's how they save money, right? Are we gonna wrap this up?
Yeah.
Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. We'll talk later.
Bye.
For more pop culture news, views, and rants, go to news.clownfishtv.com. That's news.clownfishtv.com.